This is the bit where we're supposed to have like a little chat, so we have something funny I can clip from the beginning, but I don't know.
Oh, I mean, we can talk about Bruce Willis's penis again.
What are you talking about, Willis? Why don't people say that to him more often?
Oh, I'm sure they do. And that's when the bodyguard comes in. Just
Yeah, it's time for you to leave, sir.
oh, come on! What you talking about, Willis? Where do I gotta go?
Yeah. What are you attempting to say to me, Willis? Yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to AdaptNATION, the show where we discuss the adaptations from across the nation. It's a beautiful show we do every 2 weeks, cough 3, cough 2 weeks, where we take a movie that was made from something else, made out of someone else's source material, and we tell you whether it's good or not, and whether it's a good adaptation or a bad adaptation, and also whether it's a good movie. That's pretty much the whole show, isn't it? I think that's the premise.
Yeah, we go in depth on these films, so expect spoilers.
We go deeper than the director of photography in this movie.
I don't think that's possible.
And how have you been this week, John? How have you been since the last time we did this show?
I've been okay. I've been doing all right. Not much to say. Not much has been going on. So much as I will say, because of this film, I have been way more interested in getting into some more graphic novel reading.
That is good to know. And anything that's what this is all about, broadening our own horizons a little bit and pushing out and watching something other than those Marvel movies for once.
Right, and that's what I mean by graphic novel reading. Like, I'm not your traditional comic book, superhero stuff, but something a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Well, I will say there was a great length of this comic for a little while, because I read the source material as well, where I wasn't 100% sure I wasn't just reading the new Miss Marvel. But other than that, I think it was great. I was very much on board. So getting to read something a little bit different.
So why don't you introduce what did we read and watch this week?
Well, this week we read and watched the French graphic novel and its movie adaptation, Blue is the Warmest Colour, or as the movie is actually called in French,
right.
The Story of Adele, or The Life of Adele, Part 1 and 2, which is a weird title.
It confused the hell out of me at the end.
Yeah. But the comic was called Blue is the Warmest Colour, and that is what the film is called internationally. So that's what we watched, and that's what we're calling it, you weird French moviegoers who think that's a better title.
It also makes you wonder, like, this is just complete speculation, but it makes you wonder if like they tried to like skirt by with not having it be an adaptation, and then like at the very at the very end they're like, no, come on.
Well, that gets into some things I have to say about this movie.
Yes, there are some things to be said about the adaptation of this, but how'd you hit it?
I will.
Owen, hit us with that summary.
Alright, here we go. This is the movie we watched today. Let's do it. High school student Adele feels something is missing from her life, but doesn't know what it is until, while on her way to meet Thomas, a guy who showed interest in her, she spots Emma, a blue-haired older girl, walking with her arms around another woman. Adele is fascinated by the girl, but goes on to her date with Thomas, leading to Thomas and Adele dating for a while, but the relationship doesn't feel right, so she breaks it off. Later, after a school friend kisses her, and then later rejects her, Adele starts to feel unhappy and kinda lost, so her friend Valentine takes her out for a night out at a local gay bar, where she meets Emma again. The two hit it off immediately, but Emma reveals that she is involved with someone else, but does ask her where her school is, so she might come see her again, which she does. She meets Adele outside her school, and the two become closer, but Adele's friends begin to suspect that Adele is involved with the girl and might be a lesbian, ultimately leading to them becoming quite hostile to her and kind of ostracizing her. Meanwhile, Adele and Emma's relationship becomes closer and eventually very sexual. Emma introduces Adele to her parents, who are open and accepting of their relationship, but Adele does not feel she can be open with her own parents, who are a little more conservative. As time goes by, Adele and Emma move in together, though Adele finds it hard to fit in with Emma's artist friends, feeling more isolated. Emma also is kind of dismissive of Adele's goal to become a teacher, believing she'd be better off becoming a writer or another kind of artist. As Emma's career grows, Adele feels ever more isolated, eventually beginning an affair with a work colleague, but when Emma discovers this, she ends the relationship and Adele is heartbroken. Sometime later, Emma and Adele do reconnect. Emma has a new relationship and a stepchild that makes her happy, but she admits to Adele that a new partner does not satisfy her sexually. Despite this and Adele's pleas for them to get back together, Emma is not willing. Finally, Adele attends one of Emma's shows. While Emma is still distant, Adele does discover a painting of her Emma did during their relationship is in the collection. And then she leaves. And that's pretty much it. Did I miss anything major, would you say?
No, you pretty much hit everything. Well, I mean, don't worry, everyone. We will go into this movie in incredibly...
That's it. Goodbye, guys. Nailed it.
We will be going very in-depth with this film.
It's worth mentioning, they don't explicitly go into dates, but this movie covers quite a long time period. It's a 3-hour movie, and it goes from youth to late adulthood.
Yeah.
And it does it slower than the comic.
Yeah. Okay, so, let's go into the questions first.
Okay, first question, which I'm going to try and remember to answer today, because sometimes I ask you and then forget. Were you familiar with the source material before watching the movie?
I did end up reading the graphic novel first, but they were very, very much in the same time frame. I read the graphic novel last night. I watched the movie today. So how this came about is we were both searching for a graphic novel that had an adaptation, but we didn't want to do any of the Marvel movies or even the DC ones.
We also specifically wanted to do something neither of us was familiar with.
Right.
Because we haven't done that yet. Mm-hmm. We're going to be completely blind.
Was it you or was it me? I can't remember. One of us came across this list of movies you did not know were comic book adaptations, and this was on it. Seemed like something way out of our ballpark, so let's go.
So I was in the same thing. I'd actually never even heard of the movie. Weirdly, my girlfriend usually asks me what films we're doing, and she'd seen this. I'd never heard of the movie, or seen the book. It was completely new to me. But apparently it had been on TV, so my girlfriend's actually seen this already. She's one up on me.
So the funny thing is, I thought that I had recognized the movie, but I got it mixed up with there was some other trilogy of French films, kind of involved with the same sort of subject matter, and they were based off of colors.
Yeah, the Color trilogy. There's something like what's it called? They call me Curious Orange. Mm-hmm. That one, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I've never seen those either.
Yeah, and I for some reason I thought that this was because I've heard of this. Honestly, I had heard about this movie around when it came out, which was in 2008,
2010.
2010.
Oh no, that was when the comic came out. So 2013 was this.
Okay, 2013 was when. Yeah, so that's when I heard it because there was some controversy with this film.
Yes.
And that's why I heard of it, but I had mistakenly attributed to that trilogy and not what it was.
Okay. And our next question is this a good citizen of the AdaptNATION or a bad citizen of the...
Okay.
Or is that the last question? I don't know. What were our questions
that's usually
again?
like our last question.
What's my second question?
Does this...
does this work as an adaptation of the source material, and then does it work as a standalone movie? There we go, I remember. Okay. It's been 3 weeks since we did this. You gotta let me off the hook, guys. Yeah, does this work as an adaptation of the source material?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah, I know what I think about this.
because this is kind of, for me, it's a gray area. It starts out as a really good adaptation of it, but at a certain point it breaks. It breaks away and kind of becomes its own movie and doesn't follow the source material at all. Also, a very important aspect of this is the narrative framework of the graphic novel is very much different than the movie. So, those of you unfamiliar, the graphic novel is actually told in a second-person narrative.
It's a framing narrative.
Right. It's so... Okay, we're going right into spoilers, alright? At the beginning of the graphic novel, it is clear that Clementine, which is her name in the comic, her name is changed to Adele, Adele, or is it Adelaide? Or is it... It's Adele, right?
It's Adele in the film.
Yeah, okay. And her name is changed to Adele in the movie. So if we mention Clementine, we're also talking about Adele. They're the same character, roughly. So in the comic book, it starts out, and they make it abundantly clear right off the bat. She's dead. Clementine has died. And what it is actually Emma reading through her diaries of the events leading up to them meeting and during their relationship, and then what ultimately becomes a fun.
We'll get into the details.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, when I first encountered this, I thought that was a fundamental thing they shouldn't have changed.
Yes.
Until I got to the ending, and then the ending actually would not allow for that framing narrative.
Right.
And is actually the appropriate ending to this movie.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so...
Because I would say... Oh, sorry, carry on.
So my feeling about it was actually, had they stuck completely to the source material, it would have been a completely different movie.
Yes.
But also, me personally, I feel like it might have been a more interesting movie had they stuck to the source material more. Just in terms of the narrative and how it was played out. Okay, I don't want to go that much further into this, but there are things, for a brief moment in time, the source material and the movie are very complementary to each other. And there was things that were happening in the movie that I thought for sure were kind of like filling in the blanks a little bit of the graphic novel. Because the graphic novel does a really interesting thing where everything you read is through the perspective of these diaries. So there are sections that are just missing in the graphic novel. Parts of their lives are just gone. And it's explained that these are the times when Clementine or Adele was not writing in her diary. So they don't show it. Right. Everything in the graphic novel are scenes that Emma is aware of, either by being there or through her reading these diaries. Anything that she was not present for and is not in the diary is not in the graphic novel.
Right. Well, that creates the first sort of major difference between the two, which is the graphic novel tells quite a simple story quite quickly.
Yes.
It's not a big book. No. Well, it's not a huge tome of.
It was like 129 pages, I believe.
Right. But
very, very low dialogue, actually.
But the film is a 3-hour movie.
Right.
And it's one of the only times I think a film has felt longer than its source material to me. Like, felt more full, slower, more detailed, more... Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas the film, the tone is quite different too. The comic will actually bap through time periods, scenes, and montages quite fast. Just by going, okay, this happened, roll it, scene. Mm-hmm. Whereas the movie will sometimes spend what feels like just 10 minutes just on just a scene, just a moment that
Right.
just they stretch out.
Which is something I wanted to bring up when we talk about the film as a whole.
I think we might disagree on this movie. I don't know. We'll
maybe.
see.
We'll see.
But I would say my answer to this is a really interesting example of how an adaptation can start from the same starting point and end up being actually about something very different.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is not about what the comic's about, this film.
Right.
I don't think.
No, they definitely go to a different place and try to tell a different type of story.
Right. I mean, should we get into this now, I guess, while we're still talking about this before we start talking about the movie?
Okay, well, there's a point that I wanted to bring up, specifically to try to illustrate that, where I thought, now I don't believe this is true now that I've seen the full movie, but there was a point, like I said, where I thought that these were very complementary, and specifically, so one of the big issues I had with the comic book, or excuse me, the graphic novel, the same thing, is the conclusion kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere, right?
It's abrupt and it feels cheap, to be honest.
So I didn't necessarily said it felt. I didn't really feel like it felt cheap. Like I said, like I felt like it fit the narrative. Like there was something that happened in a period of time that we don't get to see. Specifically because at this point in time, Clementine was not writing in her diary, right? And it is a period when, it doesn't even happen in this period, but there is a moment, there's a time when, Clementine starts to take drugs, right? Or starts to, take pills, right? She's taking pills. And, excuse me. And these pills exasperate a pulmonary issue that she has, to the point where she essentially has a heart attack and she is not going to recover, and that's how she dies.
Right, but this basically comes out of nowhere.
It does kind of. It's
incredibly
shocking.
Abrupt.
It's shocking, and I feel like it could have been done better in the graphic novel. I do admit it could be done better, but I feel like there's also a structural explanation for it. It might not be the best explanation, but at least there is one there.
To me, it just felt like one of those situations where we had to land on a tragic ending in time.
Right. Well, I mean, how it started, we started on a tragic, so we knew that this was coming.
Sure, we knew it was coming, but then when it actually arrives, it's like, oh, okay, that's it. It's almost Deus Ex Heart Attack. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I didn't really care for that, to be honest. I liked the comic most of the way through. I didn't really think that was...
I wasn't thrilled with how it landed either, which is why I was kind of excited for a bit while watching the movie. Because they sort of give what I feel could be an explanation of how Clementine in the graphic novel eventually turned to pills. In the movie... Adelaide, or Clementine, is shown often being a very compulsive person, where she's reaching for food constantly to eat. She's constantly fixing her hair. She has these like tics that she does through the whole movie, and I felt like, oh, so this is how they're going to explain it, saying that she is a compulsive person through, and eventually it just gets to a point where the next step in her compulsions is going to be turning to drugs or pills or something. Anything.
Well, she already smokes fairly heavily, you know?
Right.
But I think that's just being French.
So I thought that's kind of where they were going with it, but it didn't. No. Which was kind of a shame to me.
What interested me about this film is, so right off the bat, you get the feeling that it's not set in the 90s like the comic is, for the most part. Mm-hmm. You know, Adele mentions dubstep at one point, you know?
Right.
Now, time goes forward, things like that. And at first, I was a little thrown by this, because the comic is explicitly about a teenager who discovers she's gay, and nobody around her understands her, and she doesn't have support, and she feels isolated. And that isolation eventually kind of destroys their relationship in part, and sort of costs her her life a little bit. She doesn't have the supportive family to rely on, things like that. And in essence, the message of the, well, kind of the implication of the book is that Emma and Clementine were always meant to be together. Or at least they always loved each other and could have reconciled. But then she dies and they're not really together, and she's reunited through the diaries. And so what the comic is about is a couple who get together, break up, and fall apart, but against a backdrop of prejudice. In fact, one of the things that breaks them up and isolates them is Emma wants to be more open and overt in her pride, basically. She's got a rainbow flag at one point, whereas Adele really doesn't want to. She just wants to be quiet and private about it, and that kind of tears them apart. The movie's not really about that, and so the setting, actually advancing it to the present day, actually,
excuse me,
it kind of supports what the film's trying to do, I think, in that this is still a film about a girl who discovers that she's gay and gets in her first relationship with another woman, and her friends don't accept her, but they never get to the point where they're discovered by Adele's parents and they don't approve. That never really comes up in the movie in any substantial way. Well, not in the same way. What this is about, if I'll finish my thought. And then you go.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
What this movie's about is really about a young person who gets involved in a relationship with a cultured older person with an established life and goal and set of friends, and gradually comes to discover that they come from different backgrounds and don't necessarily gel together in their goals, and feels a little bit not on the same level as her partner. And what ultimately kind of drives them apart in the movie is she's more and more isolated by the fact that Emma is successful with a group of people who kind of make her feel dumb. And furthermore, the way that kind of builds in the parents, and this is in the comic book, but I think the movie makes a bigger look at it, the total difference between how their parents see things, in that Emma's parents think it's wonderful to be able to go and do what you want and dream and cook and do art and be whoever you are, whereas Adele's parents are primarily concerned with, what are you doing and can you get a job out of it? Because they clearly have less money, you know? And so I would say this movie's more about class and cultural differences than it is actually about being gay. Than the book. And that is a fascinating way to go with this comic.
So, Oh, sorry, are you done?
I'm done. Okay. Sorry. There we go.
I don't mean like, are you done? So I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong with your assessment at all. That is there. In fact, I did scope out some of the early critical response to it, and there were a lot of critics who brought this point up about the class issue and then differences of backgrounds and things like that. For me, while that stuff was there, I felt like it was kind of secondary in the movie. I got a real strong sense that this movie, whereas the graphic novel, like Owen said, is very much about discovery of sexuality and the rifts come between like how out someone wants to be and compared to how closed in someone wants to be, and
that's still in the film, by the way.
It is there. I felt like this movie deals much more substantially with the idea of unhealthy passion.
I can see that.
That's what I got from it. It was with Adele, you kind of get this character who all credit goes to the actress, and whose name is Adele, and oh god, I don't know if I can pronounce her last name. Adele Exarchopoulos. She does a really well job of playing a character who comes across almost like dead on her feet all the time.
Very, very unintentionally passive. Feels buffeted around, I think.
Right. She consistently looks like she's just being pinballed from one scene to the next. And except in these moments of incredible passion. Right. These are the few moments in the movie where she takes a very active role in what's happening around her. She's, I don't want to say she becomes dominant, but she becomes an actual part of the scene. I mean, in the movie, there's a bit where Emma is just berating her, right? Because she's discovered that Adelaide has had an affair. And, excuse me, Adele. I kept on saying Adelaide. But Adele has had Adele's had an affair. And Adele the whole time is just kind of blankly answering the questions, like not even like firing back, like, because if she was,
it's a brutal scene.
It is, and it's one of these scenes where I'm sitting, I'm like, just fire back, you know, like that's what my thought is. Like I'm getting frustrated with her because, like, okay, she starts out this scene as being like trying to come up with these like lies to explain like what had happened, and then she just doesn't follow through with them. And I'm sitting there like, just, okay, stick to your guns. All right, just stick to your guns in this moment and like yell back. Be like, how dare you accuse me of this? Like, where is this coming from? Fuck you for trying to, at least do something. You might still be in the wrong, but good God, like try to do something to save your own fucking relationship. And
yet it's completely true to that character as they build it.
Right. And she doesn't. She just takes it. And it's only when the thought that she's going to lose out on these passionate moments. And right. I don't even want to say like the sex. That's how it's visually represented in the film.
Sure.
But I don't think it's like she's a sex addict.
Well, there's a moment when it becomes clear that what she's done is not just upset Emma, but actually destroyed the relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's the turning point, because you can see that, and it's so well played, but there is a moment where it becomes completely clear that she's never considered that Emma won't be in her life.
Right.
From that point on. And it just destroys her, really. It's interesting because, of course, it is a very physical relationship. Mm-hmm. This movie has some of the most intense, but also sort of real sex scenes you'll ever see.
So, okay, I let's get into these sex scenes, okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
I will say,
in the American version, I'll just get this out of the way. I don't know what it's rated over there, but in America, this film is rated NC-17.
Okay.
That's pretty much as high as you can go in America before it becomes just pornography. Right.
Right.
So, for anyone listening, this is a very explicit film. And so I'll let you go on your opinions on the sex scenes.
Okay. I think this movie is... So I don't think these sex scenes are pornographic, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean in terms of what you can see on screen. I will say they are incredibly graphic. There is no doubt ever left that these are two people touching each other physically,
right,
intimately. I don't know where the line there draws, but and I wouldn't go so far as to say... I mean, the thing is, people talk about unsimulated sex and stuff in movies. I don't necessarily know whether this would qualify, but the point where simulation ends and real sex begins is a real big gray area in this movie, I would say. But they are incredibly graphic. But they're not primarily to entice the viewer, even if you might find yourself enticed. You know what I mean? They're not pornographic in that sense. They are very real. In fact, even early on in the relationship, there's a lot of like new relationship sort of fumbling to it, even though it's very passionate.
Right.
It's interesting because there's one scene in particular, and it's sort of like a montage of like the first time they really let loose, right? And it feels like it goes on for like half an hour of just different positions. And
right.
it really is like they are really enjoying this, by the way. That's the message, and it comes across really well. And I can honestly say, as much as I will always say, I don't think you need extremely graphic sex in movies to necessarily make a point. Well, if you're making an erotic movie, it can be nice and stuff like that, I don't know. This movie, this sex scene is... I think it's quite effective, actually. And yet it never stops being shocking how deep that camera is willing to go.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even not in a sex scene, there's just a shower scene later on where Adele's in the shower, and I couldn't help picturing the director be like, okay, now soap up your butt. Soapier.
So, maybe this is something we should wait till the end, but there was a lot of controversy with this film. And not all of it because of the sex scenes. There's been a lot of talk about the director essentially being very abusive with the actresses. Specifically, the one who plays Adelaide, who at the filming of this film is only 18. She is only 18 when this film was being made. In fact, I looked up real quick the controversy, and the first article I see is from The Independent. I don't know about their pedigree.
They're usually pretty good.
So the title basically says, "Blue is the warmest color actresses on their lesbian sex scenes. Quote, we felt like prostitutes."
Yeah. Now, I'd read a little bit of this, too. I have since seen quotes of both actresses saying they're very proud of the movie.
Right.
And they think it's a good film. But yes, like, there was one quote that, I forget who it was, said, he asked us to do things others wouldn't dare do.
Right.
And I think that's worth mentioning. Mm-hmm. Obviously, because we're mentioning it. But it is worth acknowledging that, it looks like this wasn't done with the full comfort of everybody involved.
Right.
And that's a real shame. Because I don't think this movie would have been completely ruined as a movie if those sex scenes were less graphic and less involved.
Okay, I'll read this in the question about was this like simulated or unsimulated sex. Right here we have a quote from this thing from Sado. She played Emma. It says, "Was there anything she refused to do?" Quote, "Yes, cunnilingus. We had fake, excuse the language, but we had fake pussies on. You have something to protect and tape it under. I don't make love on screen. We can fake these things. You can't fake feelings, but you can fake body language."
Yeah. Fair enough.
Okay. Alright, so there was something about these sex scenes that kind of threw me off. And it was one scene in particular.
It was when they got the air hose out and started just hosing each other down with the... Sorry, that was the last one. I completely threw them.
I just can't imagine a sex scene anymore without an air hose. It just...
I can't get it up anymore. It just won't do it for me anymore.
So there was one in particular where the characters are doing a certain position known as scissoring. Okay. Now I have seen this happen. I have seen pornographic films, everyone, and I've seen this happen. Now I happen to know I've known some lesbians in my personal life, and I have asked them about this particular position. And everyone I've talked to about this has said, this is not a thing.
I've heard this too.
Scissoring is not a thing. So when I saw it included in this film, it was in that moment where I'm like, okay, you are really towing the line here.
Well, the thing is, it sort of suggests that they didn't really have any, like, lesbians to basically say, okay, we're doing a lesbian sex scene. You want to just tell us, Like,
right.
this is a bit embarrassing, but, you know, what do lesbians do? You know, like, just draw us a few pictures, you know, it's fine. I'll shoot most of it, but just give me a lowdown, you know, what is it you do?
Right. Like, I feel that there's a lot about this film that it is filmed from a very kind of outside perspective.
Yes.
On this kind of relationship.
Well, I think that's ultimately why it ends up being more about class than about lesbianism, because I guess it feels a little bit like it's made by somebody who thinks, well, if it was done today, they wouldn't feel that much prejudice.
Right.
Well, should we get into the next thing then? Do we think the movie works as a movie in itself? Let's do it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah!
I mean, there's not really much to it. It tells a complete story. You don't really need to know the subject matter to really get into this film. Honestly, if I never watched or read the comic book and just watched this movie, probably would have kind of walked away with the same feelings as I had.
Right.
Even though I read the graphic novel.
Okay. I like it more than the comic.
Yeah,
that's not a knock on the comic, I should say.
No, that one's hard for me because there's things done with the comic book.
Oh, is that one hard for you? Did the naked film get to you, Jonathan?
So there's things that both do very, very well, and they both the comic book or graphic novel and the movie, I feel use their medium incredibly well.
Yeah, I would say the comic book had better coloring in, and the film had better moving things.
Fuck you. No, okay, you know, actually, I will bring this up, alright?
No, go for it.
The graphic novel has a very interesting art style in that just about, like, I would say 90% of it is black and white. And, like, watercolor black and white, right? It's kind of splotchy and stuff like that. And
it's nice. It's got a good look.
Except for anything blue, right?
Right.
So everything in the comic book is specifically Emma's hair is always colored in a vivid blue. But what we get also is every time that it is not a segment from her diary in the graphic novel, it is fully colored.
Right. It's a nice looking book. It's obviously, I mean this as no criticism. Mm-hmm. It's one of those books that's not done by, like, professional comic artists.
Right.
And I don't mean that as a criticism at all, but you generally see two types of art, right? You see the art in comic books that looks like people who came up through, like, the Marvel training programs, you know what I mean? And copying superhero comics and trying to get it just right. And then you see books that came up by people who just went, I'm gonna go draw a fucking comic.
Right.
Myself. And they develop completely different styles. One is very formalized, very perspective correct, very, like, blurb, anatomy and all that. And one tends to be they look like very good drawings that everyone could do. And I don't mean that as anyone can do it. I mean, they start with the same place everybody does, and then they practice, but without formalizing in the same way, I think. I'm not going to lean into what kind of education they have, and I don't mean this as any kind of criticism. It's just a very big difference between what you see in kind of indie comics and what you see in kind of superhero comics.
Right.
And it's always fun to go back to one. Because I wish this art style would move across into superhero comics more.
Well, I will say, I completely random topic. I've been praising this series for a while, but Hawkeye by Matt Fraction has a sort of it does feel a little bit more indie in terms of.
I will look into that. And I will say, I wasn't joking when I said there were times when I thought I was reading Miss Marvel. I feel like Marvel comics and stuff have been very influenced by books like this over the years. So they get more personal, you know?
Absolutely.
Clementine's relationship with her family over her being gay doesn't feel substantially different to Miss Marvel and the Muslim superhero background thing, you know?
Right. So what I was trying to say is that I think it actually might have been really interesting to have seen the film filmed with this coloring. You know what I mean?
Yes. Right, like Schindler's List with the girl with the red jacket.
Right. You know, I think that could have been really cool to see, but I will say, and I actually messaged Owen about this, right? There are some very interesting visual things they do with the movie that I really, really liked. So I suppose we just moved right into the movie now, right?
We'll stick with the movie.
Okay.
On the subject of the film, there are a few things I think are really clever about this. First of all, this film completely understands how fucking gross teenagers are. Eat with your mouth closed, you filthy pigs. It felt almost like
playing with your damn hair.
It felt almost like being back at school. Like, this is one of the most lifelike films I've seen. These people are very real. And the rooms they are in are very real. And the way they talk, aside from the fact they're all speaking French. Never seen that many people speaking French all at once. Very, very real. And then the movie's actually really well directed within that. It uses that to draw some really interesting things. Like, when we were speaking earlier about, like, passion. One of the most interesting things that it does in terms of directing is the way it plays off the fact that it's really common for people in France to kiss each other on the cheek. Friends, right? And they contrast that quite a lot between, like, every time she meets a friend, there's, like, a really rote kissing on the cheek. And then you compare that to how her relationship is with Emma, and it's completely different, you know? Right. So it's actually a really well-directed film in terms of, like, little things that they use to signal things that are coming later, you know, foreshadowing and theme. But within always a very realistic tone. So I liked it. I liked how it looked. I
had an issue, actually, with the kids.
The little kids or the fellow teens?
With the fellow teenagers. One, I kind of wish Valentine would have kept on, you know? He was actually kind of a highlight for me from the comic.
Yeah, he's very minor in the film.
Yeah, but...
And not as interesting.
Right.
They don't even really overtly say that he's gay in the film. Which I thought was a mistake.
But other than that, it's the one that actually does start to, like chastise her. So so this scene, right, where it's after Emma showed up at Adele's school, and they go off together for a while. And I believe in them, like, starting to talk, right? A little bit of gossip going on. Like, that didn't throw me, right?
Right. But
it was this confrontation that happens afterwards, right? So there's a little talk, and they're, you know, blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, they have the one friend who's, like, really overly
upset.
Vulgar, you know?
Yeah, whereas in the comic, kind of, like, everyone's equally disgusted, but in, like, a very naive way, you know?
Right. But they have, like, a friend who's, like, vulgar, who's always talking about sex, and that I believed. And right. there was the one who was just kind of playfully a lesbian, I guess.
Right.
That I believed, right? But then there was this one, right? And they don't give her a name in the movie, but I think in the book she was... what was her name? It's a name I have trouble pronouncing all the time, but it's like Seiv GY or something like that.
Okay.
Or anyway, it doesn't matter.
I'm not going to attempt it.
In both the book and the movie, she I guess maybe not out of nowhere, but like if she doesn't fit. She doesn't fit with this group of friends, right?
Well, like, I see. I mean, in the comic, it makes more sense because it's an older time period, and you kind of assume, okay, we're in a more prejudiced time, right?
Right.
And also, you don't have the contrast in the comic of all her other friends think she's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But in the movie, not only is her response very, like, violent, you know?
Right.
But all her other friends don't feel that way too. And yet they, as a group, they all seem to ostracise her.
Right. And so
Based
this
on how
is
that
kind of
one
an
feels.
issue I had. Because, like, you have one, right? You have one friend, the one who's consistently smoking, right? I don't think, like, in the classroom, she's sitting there just puffing away, you know? But she's always like...
Vive la France!
I mean, she is almost like a stereotype where she's like consistently smoking. And every time she's talking, it's like, oh, I'm only going to wait 4 days before I get laid. Oh, did you get fucked? I can smell it on you. I bet you got fucked. Like, I can smell it from here. But, like, she is incredibly vulgar. Like,
you just sat alone in the exam.
I had guy friends in high school who weren't like that, you know?
You just sat alone in the middle of an exam room. She just looks at you and goes, sex.
Exactly. It'd be like, hey, how's it going? Sex. Oh, okay. and so she's like that, and then the other friend who, you know, kisses
she never gets a line in the movie again.
No, she doesn't. But she's also very forward about it. So, like, I have a hard time believing that she's closeted at all. You know what I mean? Because like she just goes for it. Right.
Well, I think the implication is more that she's like a sort of a trendy gay. Do you know what I mean? Like she just for laughs, you know?
Yeah. So like this is her group of friends, and then there's this one who doesn't even have like concrete proof that Adele is a lesbian, right? And she just fucking loses it. She's just like, you slept naked in my bed. And
what's funny is, just before she said that, she said, like, I'm not judging, it's how you live your life, but you slept naked in my bed?
Right.
Like, that was quite a twist.
And she's like, are you in the ass? Like, dykes are in the ass. It's like, what?
Okay.
I kind of like ass too. But,
there you go. John, lesbian.
Right. But she just
always suspected.
But she just goes off the deep end, right? And like that made no sense to me. That I'm sorry, like I get it that it pushes a conflict and kind of pushes the movie around, but that particular scene felt really wrong to me.
Well, the problem is that's not what this movie's about. Like, that's the issue. Right. Because that scene comes straight from the comic, but it only works when we're in the 90s, everybody's a little bit more prejudiced, and the rest of her friends also don't approve, even if they're not that hostile. Right. You know what I mean? But in this movie, that scene doesn't fit. And that's why this movie works best the further it gets from the comic, weirdly.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so I talked about some of the visual aspects of the graphic novel, what I liked. I'm going to talk about a couple that I really liked in the movie.
Okay.
Like the graphic novel, now it's not all in black and white, right? But very clearly, blue is much more prominent, and it's very strategically placed in this movie, in very clever ways. And the funny thing, they don't even try to hide it. I don't think
in this movie titled "The Story of Adele."
Part 1 and 2. So there's one scene in particular that really caught my attention, and it's when I actually messaged Owen. I'll bring up the message. What did it say? It was. Oh, it goes. Ooh, I just caught something in this film I really, really liked. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scene where, and this is the point where Adele is about to kind of start her affair, and she decides to go out and meet up with some colleagues from work, and they're at a salsa club, which I didn't realize were very trendy in France, but they fucking love salsa music in this movie, and reggae
as they dance to it, even though it's clearly not playing in the scene as they filmed it, and they just sort of awkwardly sort of shuffle around.
Yeah.
That scene where it's her birthday party and they all just stand up and dance really, really closely next to each other in the middle of the garden is really strange. But
like if this was all I had to go on, my belief would be that French people cannot dance. There's a lot of dancing in this movie.
Fucking love spaghetti though.
That's another one I want to bring up. Freaking not just any spaghetti. No, it's spaghetti bolognese.
Right. The most Italian of spaghettis.
Right.
And they serve it in a giant bowl that they put down in the middle of a dinner, in the middle of a garden party. And then just get everybody plates. And they cook it with like all the sauce above all. They don't just like bring it out. One bowl of sauce, one bowl of pasta. They put it out, all the sauce. So you can't see a single fucking spaghetti noodle. So it looks like that
was at first.
It looks like she's just serving up a big old tray of sauce. And then somehow, some people at this dinner party managed to serve bowls of spaghetti with no sauce on. How? I changed my mind. This film's bullshit.
There's even a throwaway line in the background I heard and I caught this too, where it's like, someone goes, "Hey, can I get a little bit of sauce?" I'm like, how did you fucking miss it? You had to be intentionally trying not to put sauce on, and now you want sauce? Pick a side, alright?
This guest's fucking drowning in sauce, and one guy doesn't have enough. Like, where's Billy? Oh no, he went under the sauce. He's done.
There's just people we never saw again in the film. I'm sure they're all in the hospital with tomato fucking allergies. Like,
and then that guy says, "Did you use fresh tomatoes?" Oh yeah,
she hijacked
I got a bathtub full.
Yeah, she hijacked a fucking truck full of them. For those you know what I'm talking about, there's a scene where she serves spaghetti bolognese at a party, and it, like Owen said, this fucking thing is drowning in sauce.
You guys, no matter how big I imply the bowl she serves this in is, like, I'm surprised she could carry it with two hands.
Like,
it looked like she emptied a barbecue. Like,
it looks like she broke into a Catholic church and stole the baptismal basin.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people there, but two bowls, one for pasta, one for sauce. It's much easier.
Who in their right mind goes, huh, alright, I got a party coming here. I gotta serve food to, I don't know, 20 people, 25 people?
Can't be too fiddly. Just something people could just jump in, eat as much as they like.
Yeah, it's like, should I...
So spaghetti bolognese!
Yeah! It's... You're a lunatic. Well, okay. Back to my original point, alright? The shitty salsa dancing. So... legitimately, this is a really interesting, visually interesting thing they do in this film. In that scene, Adelaide is at the club and she's dancing with this guy, and you can tell what's coming, right? There's no way around it. Like, she is going to end up sleeping with this guy, right?
We never see a camera go up his anus, though.
You know, fucking damn. Like, really missed out there.
But, I imagine it would be hairy. He looked like the hairy type.
He kind of seemed like a hairy guy. But there's a really interesting visually thing they do, where in that scene, right, there's no blue in the actual club, right? But behind, every time they show a scene of Adele, there is a blue reflection or something behind her the entire time, which I thought was really interesting, because we definitely get to a point where you realize that everything you see blue in this film is supposed to be representative of something. and it generally is Emma, right?
Right.
Every time you see Blue, it's definitely, I think, supposed to make you feel like Adele is thinking about Emma. So much so, in fact, that in the ending, right, Adele is straight up wrapped in blue, right? She specifically wears a very vividly blue dress to this party.
See, that's not why I didn't take that from thinking about Emma, though, in that one. I thought what they were saying with that was that she had, in some sense, found her own well-being. You know what I mean?
Oh, I didn't get that at
her
all.
Her own blue.
No, I got a very different... Like, I did not think this had a very nice ending at all. I think that this ended with... I think Adele is still very much obsessed with Emma.
Well, I think that's true, too, given by the fact that she doesn't hook up with Samir, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But,
who, no, by the way, is, like, the worst, like, pursuist known to man.
Which way does she go? This way? No.
Yeah, he like, runs out of the gallery, goes the right way for about 3 feet, and goes, nah, and then hauls ass the other way. like, clearly she went down this street that has no corners, and I can see for a solid 3 blocks. She definitely didn't go the way that has a corner that I could not see, you know?
He's pretty bad. He's like, I'm gonna get some of that spaghetti. We'll go around the corner.
Like, oh man, I should really get a hold of her. I am craving some spaghetti bolognese. But no, that's what I get from it is that ending, especially when she's like engulfed in blue and we see her walking away. I think the idea is like, oh, her actions say that, oh, I've moved on. You know, I've somehow found a solace, right? Because here's my painting, like here's the painting of me. So
right.
You know, Emma must be thinking of me as well in a certain way. But as she's walking away, all you can really see, like the thing that's going to pop in your eyes the most is this blue. As she's walking away, and I think to me that suggests she's not over it. She is definitely not over it, and we don't know. Whatever is in front of her, I don't think is going to be good.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll have to wait for part 3 to find out.
Part 3 and 4.
I think it's open to interpretation.
Yeah,
but I think
a lot of this film is open to interpretation.
Yes, it's such a different film to the comic. I can't really get over it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad I read the comic first.
Me too.
I mean, it would be a weird show if I didn't. That's a good film.
So here's something else I want to say about the film. And I don't want this to come off as being a negative thing because I don't think inherently it is
Here
negative.
we go.
No.
Here we strap in, guys.
Bear with me, okay? This film is very self-indulgent. It really likes its like lingering shots.
I kept thinking the film was directed by that pretentious git at the party. He liked the sound of his own voice, didn't he?
I'm a man, so I'll never understand what true ecstasy. Like, shut the fuck up.
We ladies are all very impressed by you.
Yes, please tell us more about our own orgasms. Thank you. This guy was, and then okay. So this is another thing I kind of issues with is actually that guy, right? So the director of this film is a man.
He sucks.
And this guy that they have in this film is not I don't believe it's the director.
No.
But he's very much just a know-it-all. Like, just, and he actually goes through this whole period where he is straight mansplaining the female orgasm to a bunch of lesbians. Okay?
Yeah.
And
because he thinks it's like spiritual. He's
right.
got lots of theories about art and how artists could see something in their eyes of metaphysical element to an orgasm.
Right. And no one really calls him on this, right? Some people kind of like, oh, well, can you explain further? And blah, blah, blah. But then, like, at the end, or like the very next scene, Emma, one of the main characters goes, oh, he's a genius. It's like, all right. Like,
he's very much a director stand-in, I think. That character is not in the comic.
Yeah, exactly. But no, what I was saying is that I feel like this movie is very self-indulgent. Where, I mean, there's a scene that I get that it's supposed to be part of this montage of Adele and Emma's relationship kind of blossoming, but they go to like an art museum.
Right.
And it lingers for like 5 minutes on all these various like shots of naked women and specifically asses.
Well, as we know from this film.
Yeah, as we know, lesbians are way into asses. But it doesn't really do anything, right? It's just kind of there.
I mean, the DP is also pretty into asses.
Yeah. So here's the funny thing. It's like I get this feeling through this whole film that there's a bit of self-indulgency where they're definitely filming a lot of stuff and they want to put a lot of like lingering
I know exactly
kind
what you're talk about.
Artistic shots into this movie. And so I brought up the Wikipedia article, right? 'Cause I'm thinking like, man, there's a lot of just like weird B-roll in this film. And then I looked, and it's in the second paragraph of the Wikipedia for Blue is the Warmest Color. It says, production began in March 2012 and lasted 6 months. Approximately 800 hours of footage was shot.
Yeah. I think you can feel it. It feels like, you know when they make comedies out of huge reels of people trying to act normally?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like that for a weird romance tragedy.
Right.
But I think it kind of works.
Yeah,
I mean, the lingering.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like it's. I don't say it's bad, but there is a certain feeling of like, okay, this is your art house foreign film, right? There's some trappings to it where it's like, okay.
So I think what works about this movie is, part of the thing that's interesting is, I think the film isn't boring, despite the fact that it's 3 hours and it's about one relationship gradually sort of coming together and breaking up.
Yeah.
And yet it's not a boring movie. It's not dull or slow or drags a lot. I did take a break. I didn't watch it all in one sitting, but I didn't find it a complete and total, like, snooze, which I often find sort of slice of life films can. But it also gave a lot of room to kind of build things up without explicitly stating it. Like, okay, here's a really interesting example. Would you say Emma comes off less good in this than she does in the comic?
Yeah, I guess I would say that.
I think they really built that very interestingly without ever overtly stating it. Adele never says anything negative about Emma in the film, ever. But she's kind of condescending. She kicks Adele out of that relationship without a second thought, despite the fact that when they met, she was in a relationship. You know, she herself has cheated. You know, she's been there.
Right.
And she does sort of start to slowly ignore Adele more and have kind of her snooty friends. And she's kind of condescending kind of about the oysters too. You know, that whole scene, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of moments where you get a feeling that Emma isn't necessarily that good for her as a match, you know, but they are so committed. And so at the end, when she doesn't want to take her back, it doesn't feel so much like a loss, I think, as Adele seems to think it is. You know what I mean? But they built that up without ever being very overt about it. And they do that a lot in the film, partly because they've got so much footage and so much time and so many scenes. I found it very, very natural. What was so interesting about it is I could imagine someone else watching this film and feeling completely different, you know?
Right.
From that. I also... it's so strange, actually. When you sit and think about the run of the movie, There's so many things that don't actually make sense if they weren't planning on following the comic more closely.
Right.
Like, why include Sabine at all? You know?
Right. So that's an interesting thing. Which was actually what I was going to bring up. It's kind of not necessarily a counterpoint to you, but there was some stuff in the novel or in the graphic novel that I think suggests that Emma wasn't great.
Right.
And specifically the Sabine character, because in the graphic novel, Sabine plays a little bit bigger role as...
She's not always in the book, but they're together much longer, and Adele's very aware that they're together.
Right. There's actually a period of time where Emma is having an affair with Adele in the graphic novel, right?
But that also is happening in the film, but they just don't really address it.
Well, they don't acknowledge it at all, and so I was actually led to believe that, like, oh, she just left Sabine for Adele, that they weren't actually having an affair.
Oh, I guess maybe it was just my familiarity with the comic that made me think they were still together.
Yeah, but yeah, in the graphic novel, the Sabine character and Emma are still together for quite a while.
Right. In fact, a big part of the early stuff is that Adele is the other woman.
Right.
And Emma seems to be reluctant to leave Sabine, A, because she thinks Sabine can help her career, and B, she also has this kind of weird thing where she thinks that for Adele it's just going to be a phase and she's going to grow out of it. Or Clementine, I should say.
And even when she does leave, like, Sabine, she comes to Clementine or Adele and tells her this, but she doesn't phrase it in, like, a way of, like, now we can be together. It's like, oh, I left Sabine. I can handle my career on my own. I don't need Sabine. And it's like, and Adele or Clementine, same person, gets kind of upset with this, and she's like, well, no. What about me? Like, I'm not gonna just, like, wait for you to, like, feel good enough about what you've done to come to me, you know? And so I think there's actually some stuff in the graphic novel that suggests that Emma's not the greatest person.
I think it's different, though.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a different tone, and for different reasons. But it's there.
Emma in the comic seems almost insecure, despite seeming very confident. She doesn't think it's going to work out. She doesn't think Clementine's gonna stay gay. Basically, she doesn't. She doesn't expect it to go the way she hopes, and so she worries a little bit and doesn't want to kind of delve too deeply into it, even though she wants to.
But she is actually proven right about that by the end of that book.
Right. That's why the ending sucks so much for me. I really don't like the ending of the comic. I don't think it works that well. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the movie for me, I liked the ending more. Because then what you've got isn't, oh, it's tragic because she died, and then thus they never got to reconcile. It was tragic because sometimes you can love someone so much when you're young, and then it turns out you will never be with that person, even though you really want to.
Right.
And that was a more real feel for me, I thought. You know, a more truthful sad to end on than, well, looks like her heart gave out, turns out she was taking drugs.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think you're wrong about it being kind of a weak ending. I do think, though, like, there might be a narrative reason for it, just not a very good one.
It is what it is, you know?
Yeah. So real quick, jump back to our earlier talk about the sex scenes. I just got to a different part of the Wikipedia on the Blue is the Warmest Colour. The LGBT and feminist response to the film. The film received LGBT and feminist critical comments for the dominance of the male gaze and lack of female gaze, with some reviewers calling it a patriarchal gaze. Author Julie Moreau, who is actually the author of the graphic novel, was among the harshest critics on this point, saying, "It appears to me that that this was what was lacking on this, or excuse me, it appears to me this was what was missing on the set: lesbians."
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. For all the nice things I've said about the film, I think it is definitely not a film about gay people made by gay people.
I will say, though, that the Moreau is the next line says, although Moreau praised Kachichi's, is that how you pronounce his last name? I don't know. The directors praised the director's originality, describing his adaptation as coherent, justified, and fluid, a masterstroke.
I think that's kind of how I feel, maybe without going so far as to say a masterstroke. I didn't write the book. I don't get to say things like that, I suppose. It felt to me like they took the starting off point of the first act of the book and then made a film with it that was different and yet equally valid as a direction for that story. For the most part.
Yeah.
I particularly liked how the dinner scene is... The dinner scene where they meet Adele's parents is the same as in the comic. Almost identical. But by pairing it with the scene where they meet Emma's parents, which plays out very differently,
right?
That scene becomes better and different in the overall context of the movie, and about something different. It becomes more explicitly about class by showing her parents first, Emma's parents first. You know, right. So I liked that.
So this is something I want to bring up. Just to kind of go back to the graphic novel for a bit. Did you find that scene where all is revealed to Adele's parents in the graphic novel kind of weird?
Well, okay. First of all, the scene's really strange in its setup. Maybe it's because I'm not French.
Right.
But hey, first of all, here's the thing I wouldn't do. If I was gay and I was trying to hide it from my parents, right? I might invite my boyfriend over for dinner for like a stealthy introduce to the parents thing.
Right.
But I wouldn't be like, hey, stay the night.
Yeah.
Also, the night let's fuck.
Yeah.
Also, we're going to stay naked all night. Also, go down and get a drink. Right. Do it naked.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what got to me. I'm like I've spent like sleepovers at my friend's house and stuff like that. You know, one, we weren't having sex. Two,
well, sure, but have you slept at your girlfriend's house with the parents there?
Yes, I have.
Did you walk around naked?
No,
like not just the bedroom, like the whole house.
Right, and even if the guy or the idea is in the comic book is that Emma's over there and they're supposed to be just friends, right?
Right.
Like,
well, not even friends. She's my philosophy tutor.
Yeah, she's my philosophy tutor who's just like naked in my bedroom.
How can you prove there are no clothes? Maybe all clothes are just an imagination. Socrates said.
To brassiere or not to brassiere. But
I do like the panel though, because the way it works is really funny. She goes down to get a glass of milk, which is really funny because, by the way, in France, people don't really drink milk.
Right.
Some don't drink it cold, which is why there's this running thing of she's trying to get Clementine / Adele to drink strawberry milk. It's not a big thing in France. Mm-hmm. But she's like, I'm gonna go get a glass of milk.
She's and right, dude. That shit's gross.
Clementine's not like, why? Like, it's the middle of the night. just make do without your milk.
Or it's like, so I'll go get it, you know?
Right. So she goes downstairs naked. And she's like, oh, just naked through the house. Gonna go get me some naked milk. Didn't even bother putting clothes on, which is really weird. And then she opens the fridge door, and she's illuminated, fully naked. And then they look across, and the mum's just there, and she looks like Droopy Dog when he's caught off guard, like when he's suddenly. It's just like, And then the next panel is her doing like a little waddle run up the stairs. Not like, why are you naked? Like the first thing she thought was like, I better go check if my daughter's naked too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right. It was such a weird thing where it was like, okay, if it was my house, right, and suddenly there's just a naked woman in my kitchen, right, my first question isn't going to be like, oh, is my daughter clothed? And go run up and check. It's going to be like, it's going to be, what the
this
fuck
is
are you
missing
doing?
piece of the puzzle. Right.
It's like, why are you naked? Go put on some clothes.
It might
Goddamn.
Right. And there are no excuses like, oh, Emma's just really eccentric. She always sleeps naked. Oh, well, all girls together. You know what I mean?
Right.
Her mom goes, wait a minute. My daughter's a lesbian?
So this is, I think, was actually what the film is missing out on. There's a really, regardless of what you feel about the ending, there's actually a really beautiful thing that happens in the graphic novel that is completely missed in the movie, because, like we've said before, the movie goes into a different place, right?
Right.
So in the graphic novel, there is a big falling out between Adele and her parents, and
yes,
and it's suggested that this might actually be the start of when she might be taking drugs, but she's not.
Well, you do see her take the pill straight afterwards.
Yep. So, but what happens is Adele at the beginning of this book, Emma is at Adele's parents' house, right? And she's going to spend the night and have fucking spaghetti bolognese.
And she's like, whoa, can I get a little more sauce on this?
Yeah, you're going a little light on the sauce there, Chief.
And then pouring it in the bathtub around her. Like, why did my daughter allow her to come here? What is this all about? More spaghetti! They're just shoveling it into the bath. She's like, I've got sauce all over your daughter's diaries. Read them to me! Spaghetti!
So, what has happened, and we kind of understand this towards the end, but what has happened was, in her moments before she died, Adele made a final wish to her mother, is give Emma the diaries, let her read them, and let her stay at your house for the night. Okay? Eat
really
dinner.
Specific, right? The first two make sense. The third one's a bit of a leap.
Right.
She can read them at her house.
Right, but it's Adele essentially making this final wish of like, hey, Emma was very important with my life. I need you to accept her.
Right. Doesn't work, but...
Well, the mother desperately tries, right?
Yes.
The mother really goes out. The dad
desperately doesn't.
Yeah, desperately doesn't. But you can see that this was a really, really kind of, I thought, a really beautiful thing that happened in the graphic novel. That doesn't happen in the movie. I was actually kind of sad about that.
I was too. In fact, that whole opening to the movie is so strange because you spend the whole time going, wait, they cut this?
Right.
And then when you get to the end, you're like, oh, okay, they couldn't possibly have included that.
Right.
But it still feels like a loss. Mm-hmm. Because that opening of the book is gripping.
Yeah.
It really works.
So, here's another scene, jumping back to the movie. Here's a really awkward scene for me. It's a powerful scene, but it has a really awkward moment in it. The owner of the cafe where that final conversation between Emma and Adele happened is maybe one of the most like laissez-faire, lax cafe owners known to man. Because what happens is, so these two are having this conversation, and Adele is really like I miss you, I want to touch you, I want to feel you again, I miss you. Like, this is where I get my theory that this is very much about unchecked passion.
Right. Check the passions, kids.
Yeah, check the passion at the door. But they're going on, and Adele like attempts to like swallow Emma's hand. Like,
well, I mean, her other hand goes somewhere else too.
Right,
Like,
right.
They're very physical, even in public.
So in this moment, Adele has forced essentially Emma's hand into her crotch, and she's basically getting finger banged in the middle of this cafe. Where just a second ago she asked for a cup of coffee, and they got some bullshit cups of coffee in France, by the way. I'd be upset if I got a cup of coffee and it was that small. Like,
well, okay, but what about the size of the one earlier on when Emma's on the phone?
She has a soup bowl.
And she's got that kettle, and she's drinking from what looks like a flower vase. Oh yeah, coffee.
I know, it's like, do you want a cup of coffee? I have a metric gallon here.
No, still working through the soup from dinner.
I brewed the coffee and leftover sauce.
Oh no. That's terrible.
But yeah, so Emma and Emma's kind of with it at first, right? So she's going along and she's just fingering the hell out of Adele in the middle of this cafe, while Adele is like swallowing. She is swallowing Emma's hand. Like it starts out as she's kissing on it and then like licking on it, and then she's like.
I like the people in the background who are sort of out of focus and not really paying any attention. And I kept wishing it would kick into like one of those full-on sex scenes, like camera up the butt, like totally naked, everything, tables knocked over on the floor, and those people in the background would still be just like doo-ba-doo-doo. Oh, the cakes are good here today, aren't they? I like these.
Vive la France!
I like these little shortbread squares. They're delicious. What was that? Oh yeah, I like the Oh yeah, a cup of tea maybe? It's delicious. And cream bun, lovely.
Oh, they have spaghetti bolognese here.
Adele gets up. What did you say? It is about a woman's unchecked passion for spaghetti bolognese. And how politely she can lie about actually liking oysters after all. Sure. That scene was weird.
It's really a food movie.
that scene was really weird setup. The way he was like, oysters, oysters, oysters. I bought some new oyster today. I sure do fucking love oysters for like 20 minutes. And then Emma just goes, oh, I forgot to say, Adele doesn't like oysters. I thought he was going to cry.
I mean, what a... I don't... Look, I don't mean this in such a derogatory term, because I know there's some people really into it, but that is one cuck of a fucking husband, right? Because the scene right before that is, oh wow, you have some lovely paintings in this house. Oh yeah, my ex-husband did them all. They're beautiful, aren't they? I fucking loved how well he painted. Look at this. They're just wonderful fucking paintings. Isn't that right, Pierre? Well, I like food and wine and oysters.
My thing about Adele in that scene, though, is, like, she's obviously been bitching about not liking seafood enough that Emma's mentioned it, right? Right. They go down fine. She likes them in the end.
Yeah, she's on board.
Try them out. Try them first, then moan about it. Been invited to dinner. You ungrateful sod.
I like too where it's like, oh, you haven't eaten them right. Here, put some lemon on. Oh, that's the trick.
Lemon changes everything.
Spritz of fucking lemon makes it all better.
I like it when he's going, oh, what about prawns and king prawns? And she's like, no, that one the most. The more you're saying, the more I'm revolted by your food. Get away from me, you disgusting food man.
Why can't you paint like Adele's father? Or Emma's father.
Then you see the painting, it's just all paintings of oysters. Well, shit. This whole family sucks.
And that's the funny thing, too, is like, like, it was done pretty tastefully, but the whole oyster thing is clearly like, you like pussy?
Things.
Like,
oh, sure. Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, that's pretty much what it was. It's just like,
There's a lot of moments like that.
Like, here, eat this oyster so I can gauge your level of cunnilingus.
Are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that the guy was like, what do lesbians eat?
How do lesbians seduce each other? I got it.
If the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. I mean, those parents were full of shit too, because when they ask her what she wants to do and she says teacher, they might as well leaned over and gone, "What are you, fucking stupid? You don't got the brains for a real job? You thick as pig shit? Is this who you're dating, Emma? What the hell's going on?" Like, they were not understanding. They tried to be.
They were like they were the exact opposite, but also like incredibly the same as Adele's parents, where it's like, you go, "Oh, I'm an artist. Oh, well, there's not much money in artists." Like, "Oh, I'm actually kind of going to be a graphic artist too. There's a lot of jobs in that." "Well, you better get someone who can have a real job," and probably, But then you go over to like Emma's parents, and it's like, "Oh, I want to be a teacher." Have you ever thought about teaching butterflies interpretive dance? Like, maybe that would be better suited for you. You fucking Neanderthal.
That was exactly the reaction. And then the stepdad goes, "Well, at least you know where you're going. That's important. Right to the bottom, you thick little..." It's not true though. I mean, she did affair herself out of a really nice house.
That was a nice house.
It was. I want to live there.
It was a great garden too. Like,
I'll never cheat on you, Emma. Let me live in your lovely house.
I just want to live in your backyard with with a theater projector.
Right. But it's so weird because as soon as the movie goes, okay, we're deviating now, we're doing our own thing, we lose all those characters. We never see. I will say this is a big failing in the movie. We never see Adele's parents again. We never see Emma's parents again. We never see Sabine again. We never see Valentine again.
We never see Thomas's cock again. Oh. Well done, by the way, Thomas. Well done.
It was like... Thomas was different in this one a little bit, though.
Yeah, he wasn't as much of a little pansy. Let's rate it in a bit, but we're laughing a lot about this, but it's actually because I think that it's easier to make jokes about like a really good movie than a really bad one in a weird way, because like a really bad movie is just kind of funny on its own.
You have to be watching a really bad movie to enjoy it.
Right.
Just talking about it afterwards and just going, well, that was bad.
Right. I do legitimately think this is a really good movie.
Yeah, me too.
Not to ruin our final question, but I do think it's a really good movie. But there's some interesting moments and kind of funny moments. But yeah, so Thomas, right? So this whole thing kicks off with Thomas, right? This is what kind of kicks off Adele's weird
telling
quest.
You this about Thomas. He might deny it now, but he definitely plays hard rock. No, I don't. It was a joke.
Yeah, he could literally like string six strings on his penis and play the upright bass. Like,
you know that after that conversation though, he went right home and recorded like a prog rock album. Like, gotta get something melodic.
Oh no, he went home and put up a red, green, and yellow flag. Hung some beaded curtains in his place and got really into the steel drum.
I mean, she was into reggae, wasn't she?
Right.
Like, that's what I would do. She just turns up in blackface and she's like, "This is not what I meant, Thomas. Dear God, no."
I do like this bit where Emma is trying to talk to... I mean, this actually kind of leans into the whole idea that these people... Emma and Adele were never really compatible from the get-go. But there's this really funny, not funny, but kind of awkward moment where Emma is trying to tell Adele about Sartre. I can't remember his first name, but the philosopher, Sartre.
What, Sartre?
Sartre, thank you.
Jean-Paul Sartre.
Yeah, Jean-Paul Sartre. And she goes, and Adele goes, oh yeah, it's like Bob Marley. Yeah, it's just like Bob Marley. Well,
We're jamming.
It's like, the song "Get Up, Stand Up." He's yeah, yeah. It's
I
absolutely
think,
the same.
therefore I am. Mon.
But okay, so in the movie, Thomas is kind of like, okay, he's there. They break up. He sheds a tear, and then he kind of storms off, smoking a cigarette. Right, very French. In the graphic novel, he's literally on his knees, naked, arms wrapped around Adele, like, don't go! Don't go!
And also, I didn't feel like they'd been together that long, to be fair, the comic. Like, he was very sad. And also, he was like a senior. He was like 2 years older than her, I think.
He showed up at her funeral. Remember? Like,
Yeah.
Emma, he's like, yeah, Thomas showed up. Like, what a freak. Oh, yeah.
He's like fucking the coffin. Oh, don't leave me.
I'm gonna get it one way or the other. It's like how did he explain?
He says I'm making a scene.
But it's like, seriously, like in the span of the graphic novel, we're talking like 10 years, right? Like about 10 years.
Right.
From the point of
And
where
he's
the
never
story...
seen again after they break up, so they weren't like close.
Right. So it's like how did he explain? Like, I kind of hope that he went off and got married and stuff like that. It's like, oh, honey, Thomas, where are you going today? Oh yeah, I gotta go to a funeral of this girl I almost shagged back in high school that I was really into.
Look, I don't want to like give you the wrong idea. What I will say is, I do wish I'd married her instead of you.
Remember that phase where I was gonna, get a sex change,
Remember every time we had sex and I used to sing, oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Clementine? I hadn't just been watching the Huckleberry Hound marathon.
I'm gonna leave it there. This could have got way worse, but let's just move on. So, it's a good movie. I think it's a legitimately good movie. It's an
the best movie
artistic
we've
film.
done.
Yeah, it's definitely the highest quality film we've done.
And source material, probably.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that this is kind of a very telling thing about the quality of acting. There's a few times watching this movie that I kind of forgot that it was a French film.
Right.
And I would glance away like at my phone or something and realize like, oh shit.
I had no idea what was going on.
It's like, oh shit. Like I just forgot that I don't speak French, so I need to be reading these subtitles. And I would look back and I never felt like I actually missed anything because I feel like
I feel that's also a testament to how slow it goes.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. But but the acting I think was on par, like really good to the point where they were absolutely conveying their emotions in ways other than dialogue. And that's really, really it's fascinating and enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. It's great. And, like, obviously this is a little hard to judge in a foreign language, but I felt like the dialogue itself was good, too. It always felt effective, well written. Because people don't talk a lot in this movie, too. There's a lot of silence, or a lot of conversations going on, like, you'll often come in just in the middle of sort of montages of scenes. People, like when she's teaching,
Right.
And you'll just spend a little time with that, and then it'll cut to the end of the day and she's crying still because they've broken up, It's such a good film.
And yeah, it really is. And it's one of those things where Like, I'm hesitant to learn more about the director because, I've you know,
his other movie, Love in a Women's Prison.
yeah, his next movie, Red Lesbian Sex, because he likes colors, you know. But
Red Lesbian Sex. Still don't know why it was called La Vie d'Adele, like The Life of Adele. I just don't know why that was the movie.
I don't know. I really don't. Like I said, like my theory was like part of me believes that they were really trying to slip by that this was not an adaptation, and then finally someone goes, no.
Maybe there was just a guy when it was coming out, and he was like going through like the Home Depot, like feeling all the paints. Like, this makes no sense. They all feel exactly the same temperature.
Yeah, like you get the feeling that like they were like just about to finish this movie, and like one of the actresses like was walking by a comic book store, and like, oh hey, the cover of that novel looks kind of similar to like our like promotional stuff. That son of a bitch. But
apparently, the actress who played Emma was in Ghost Protocol, the Mission Impossible movie. I think she was that international assassin. You know?
Oh, the one that gets kicked out of the window?
I believe so. She's done quite a lot of stuff, actually. She's good. She's got a good face for a villain. She's a good scary face, you know?
Yeah, it looks like, what was it, Leah Seydoux? Is that how you pronounce her last name?
I assume.
Seydoux, okay.
Seydoux, la la, Seydoux. Come on.
Da, da, da. What character did she do? Mission Impossible goes for... Yeah, Sabine. Yeah, she was the assassin.
The assassin.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting character, actually.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely looks like she has made her way out of like French cinema. I mean, it looks like she definitely has plenty of still roles in French, but since since Blue is the Warmest Color, she was actually in Mission Impossible before this as well. So she's actually had a pretty successful career outside of.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
it's always nice.
Out of France.
All right. Well, as we're starting to roll into tangents, shall we wrap up?
Oh, good. She's going to be in Death Stranding.
Norma Reedus and the Funky Fetus. That's not my joke. I stole that from on the internet.
I hope they rename Death Stranding of The Life of Norman Reedus and the funky embryo. Or the Funky Fetus, part 1 and 2.
The Life of Norman Reedus, part 1 and 2, yeah. I'll be into that. Alright, so, John, was orange, orange, you got me doing it now. Blue is the warmest color. A good citizen of the AdaptNATION? Or a bad citizen of the AdaptNATION?
I will say good.
I will also say good. I don't have anything else to say about it, really. I thought it was really great, and I was genuinely fascinated by how different it was from the source material, while still being sort of true to it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a rare occurrence that we've seen so far, where, because we did get a little bit of this with Alice's Restaurant, where they took the source material and expanded upon it and make something a little bit more.
Right.
But this was far more effective, and
both had extremely graphic sex scenes, though, right? Man, that really would have pushed Alice's Restaurant over for me. If I'd actually had to watch Arlo Guthrie fumble his way awkwardly through those encounters.
just trying to engulf Alice's hand in her restaurant.
Sorry, is her restaurant a euphemism for something?
So, yeah, no, this is a good adaptation, a good film all around.
All right. Well, I think it's probably time for us to say goodbye. Now, we haven't decided what we're doing next time, though.
No, do we know what the category is, though?
Well, let's see. We've done this is what, episode 3? We've done a video game, a song, a comic.
A book.
Have we done a book?
Yeah, it was our first episode, man.
What, Assassin's Creed? What was the first one? Oh, it was...
Atlas Shrugged.
I knew we'd done another one, and I was completely blank. I'm starting to forget the episodes already. Okay, so we've done a book, a game, a song, a comic. Should we do... Oh, well, we could do Beowulf next week, and we'll do the poem.
Yeah, oh god, I gotta read Beowulf.
Yeah, that's the worst bit of it. Have you ever read Beowulf?
Not since high school.
Well, that'll do.
Fair enough.
I think... Do you know what I would say for the purposes of this? Like a Cliff Notes version and a perusing of the text is appropriate.
Okay.
Like, remind yourself of the story of Beowulf before we do it, and a bit, and like, sample the poem, I guess. But we don't need to go through the whole poem, because it's really long, you guys.
It's a really long poem.
So what, yeah, Beowulf in a fortnight? I've never seen this Beowulf movie.
Oh, me neither.
But it is Zemeckis, and Zemeckis is usually pretty good, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess that's...
Yeah, he has a hit and miss. He has a hits and misses.
Yeah, okay. Polar Express. That's his big miss, isn't it?
Yeah, well, to me, I don't like Forrest Gump, but...
Oh, yeah, I'm not a big Forrest Gump fan. I like Back to the Future, and, I quite liked Romancing the Stone. That was
I
pretty
don't think I ever saw that. Anyways, so yeah, next week, Beowulf then, I guess, huh?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alright.
I look forward to seeing Ray Winston all CGI'd. Alright. Bye, guys.
Have a good one.